What is up, guys? Well, June is here. 2024 is just peeling off of the calendar. But I was able to check out 9 new release films in the month of May. One of them was something that I saw last year at Fantastic Fest, and 2 of these were something that I saw a couple of months ago at the Overlook Film Festival. So going to be an interesting little group of movies here, some new releases, some independent films, some really good stuff, some really bad stuff. Let's get into all of the madness of May 2024's new release films. Coming in at number 9, not only the worst film of May, but what is right now my frontrunner for worst film of the year, the most miserable experience that I had in the theater all year long so far, and that is Tarot. Now, I will be fair. A lot of you that see this film are probably not going to be as harsh on it as I am. There's already a bunch of people in the comment section of my review saying, it's not that bad. Like, it's not good, but it's not that bad. And I think that's going to depend entirely on how many bad horror films you subject yourself to in a calendar year. Because I go to see pretty much all of them, this is so far the latest in a string of just really, really disappointing and miserable horror films. Almost every single month so far in 2024, there's been 1 or 2 really bad horror films. This has been a terrible year for horror. Not to say that we haven't gotten a couple of good ones, but the bad ones have been unrelenting. And so when I sat down to watch Tarot, I pretty much expected exactly what type of film this is going to be. A really cheaply made, generic, run-of-the-mill, haunting film where the tarot cards are the only thing that is unique about it. You know, the subject that brings about the haunting is the only thing that is unique about it. And that's unfortunately exactly what this film turned out to be. And I was just done. I mean, you got a bunch of dumb characters that aren't written well, that aren't performed all that well. The guy from the recent Spider-Man trilogy who plays Ned was decent enough as kind of the goofy comic relief, but certainly not even his best performance. A couple of interesting creature designs here and there, maybe with some of the way the manifestations of these different tarot readings are coming after these kids, but the kills are all off screen. There's no gore whatsoever. The plot is something that we have seen dozens of times. It's not filmed or shot or crafted in any unique way. I mean, it's just something that feels like somebody shit it out because they could make it cheaply. And unfortunately, it's already made like $40 million. This movie has made more money than Abigail, and that fucking haunts my dreams. Like that I hate the fact that is reality. But nonetheless, yeah, this is a movie that 15 minutes in, I was like, please be good. And then after it just started to go through the same motions of dozens of other movies like this, emotionally, I was just done. And I was miserable sitting through the other 70 minutes of it. Coming in at number 8 is not a whole lot better, but I would certainly rewatch this over Tarot, and that is The Strangers Chapter 1. And this was a massive disappointment. Now, I'm somebody I'm on the island of not thinking the original Strangers is all that good. Not to say that there's not good things about it, because I do think there are some great shots, some great sequences. I think the masks and everything are iconic. So I get why it's a favorite out there for a lot of you. I've just never found the film to be all that great. I've never found the characters to be likable. I've never found the situation to have enough steam to maintain even the short runtime that film has. Pray at Night, I had a little bit better experience with, but even that one wasn't a massive fan of it. So while I certainly had my skepticism, given that the trailer basically made this look like a cheap remake of the original film that I'm already not a fan of, I was hoping, because Renny Harlin directed it, who I'm a huge fan of, and the fact that somehow they have a bunch of story that they have decided to split into 3 films that we're going to get over the next calendar year or so, is something that enticed me to go, maybe they have some good ideas. Maybe there's something different or unique here. Maybe the trailer is keeping all that secret and they're just showing all the run-of-the-mill generic Strangers shit, but when we see the movie, we're going to be surprised. And my God, was this just exactly what the trailer showed. It was just a cheap, uninspired retread of the original film. I mean, and I'm not a fan of the original film, and the original film is 5 times the movie that this is. Yet again, some of the dumbest fucking characters that you will ever see in a horror film, which to me, you can get away with that a little bit. I understand sometimes you got to have people do dumb shit to make your script work. I feel like you can put a little more effort into your writing to get around that. But if you're stuck and you have to have that, fine. Once, maybe twice, we can get away with that in a slasher film. When it's every fucking decision that your main characters make for 90 minutes, no, I don't care now. I kind of want them to die because they're so goddamn stupid. And so that was a big thing that was just a knock on my enjoyment, was I just did not like these two characters whatsoever. The scares are not all that well crafted, nowhere near as good as the original film. There's no real gore or carnage or anything because there's literally one person who dies throughout the majority of the runtime, and then the movie ends the exact same way almost as the original film. And then there's just like this weird little sequel bait mid-credits scene that even that felt awkward. So I don't know what is going on with this. I don't know what the hell they have up their sleeves to think that they have 3 movies worth of stuff to do with these characters. I am hoping that this was just some kind of weird, necessary evil to go through to set things up, and then all the really cool, interesting stuff is going to be in Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. But what a horrible way to sell non-Strangers fans and actual Strangers fans on your trilogy than to give just a shitty, uninspired, lazy retread of a much better film to kick off your new trilogy. Coming in at number 7, and there is a major hike from number 8 to number 7, is a film that I saw at the Overlook Film Festival called New Life. And I'm not going to say too much about this film because I walked into it absolutely blind. And while I wasn't a huge fan of it, I feel like what I did enjoy about the film was because of me being able to kind of go through the ride of this movie without having things spoiled for me or having too many details. Essentially, you have this young girl that is on the run from some government agency. You don't know why. You don't know what she did. You don't know if she did anything. You don't understand what exactly they're pursuing her for. And throughout the movie, that's kind of the mystery that gets unfolded. And the main person that is following her is this badass agent who is going through an ALS diagnosis. And that's kind of the most unique aspect of this movie, is the way that they explore how ALS affects somebody. And so you have one character, the protagonist, that is on the run, that is meeting all these different people, and all these really bad things are happening because she's getting them in the middle of the crossfire. And then you have the other lead, who is, somewhat the antagonist, who is trying to do her job, trying to pursue this girl to prevent something from going on, and is struggling with this disease and is literally losing herself in the process. So it's an interesting movie. I feel like it could have done a little bit more for me. I can't get too specific, but when I see this at a horror film festival, I expect a bit more horror than this movie delivered. And so I would recommend you checking it out if it's an intriguing premise to you. It is something that I feel like we've seen somewhat versions of this before, but the ALS side of it makes it kind of unique. So it's good. It's worth checking out. I just wish it delivered a bit more in the back half. Coming in at number 6 is probably the most talked about movie in my circles this month, and that is In a Violent Nature. And this is a film that was really getting a lot of buzz and a lot of hype and a lot of interest months ago when they dropped the first trailer. And essentially what this is a riff on Friday the 13th styled slasher films, camp slasher, woods, the wilderness slasher films, with this big, brooding, hulking, silent, stalking slasher. Only the entire film is told from a third-person perspective of the slasher. There's just like this camera following over the shoulder of the Jason Voorhees-esque killer the 98% of the runtime. So it kind of switches the dynamic of what your typical slasher film is. And it was a really interesting experiment. I recommend everybody that is a slasher fan at least check it out, because there's some people that I know that have loved it. There's some people that I know that have hated it. There's a lot of people I know that are somewhere in the middle, which is kind of where I lie with it. It's worth experiencing because it is something so unique and fresh for the genre, in a genre, or a subgenre rather, that is notoriously difficult to do something really interesting with. So I think that it was worth checking out. It was an interesting experience. I think that there are some pretty solid kills, one of which is one of the best kills ever in a slasher film. And I've tried to say that without feeling like I'm overhyping it, but now that more people are seeing it and everybody's saying the same thing, I don't think I'm overhyping it. It's legitimately, the yoga kill in the middle of this film is one of the greatest on-screen kills ever. If I was to do a top 15, top 20 kills in horror history, it would easily make that list. It's that good, and it's practical. And the other kills are pretty good too, but nowhere near as standout as that one. Some other details about it I thought were interesting, like the design of the killer was interesting. His mask, his style of weapons is a little unique. Where the movie really struggles is the nature of the experiment. You have the whole movie told from the perspective of the killer. So there's no tension. There's no suspense. There's no scares. There's no, your heartbeat doesn't really move at all throughout the entire movie because you see everything that this guy's about to do. You see him stalking the victims. You see him walking up to them. You know exactly when and who he's about to kill. And so until the last 10 minutes of the film where the perspective changes, you don't realize how devoid of tension and suspense the movie is until suddenly it's there. And you're like, oh shit, yeah, that's been missing for the last 90 minutes. Also, the ending, the last 10 minutes of the film, I thought was a terrible way to end this movie. I thought that it was a really strange choice to suddenly change perspectives, and the scene that we experience with this character in their perspective just feels like this overly long, slow, drawn-out dialogue exchange that leads to nothing. I don't know what they were trying to convey with that scene, aside from just inserting the tension that has not been there for the rest of the film. I don't know if there's something deeper they were trying to get across there until I watched the movie a second time, which I don't really have the desire to do. I won't be able to really unpack that much more. But it was just a really whimper of a way to go out. And, beyond that, there's a lot of other cliches too. Stupid characters, bad dialogue, which is kind of like part of the DNA of slashers, I guess. I feel like we're at a time where we should be able to get past that a bit. But if they wanted to kind of harness that to keep the Friday the 13th charm, I guess I get that creative decision. And this is something that it's not going to bother most people that watch this film. But when I saw the premiere at the Overlook Film Festival, I didn't really like the attitude of the director and the way that he answered a lot of questions. I honestly think he was probably just trying to be funny and snarky, but a lot of the answers to the crowd's questions just kind of had the tone of like, yeah, we did that to annoy you. Yeah, we did that to frustrate you. Yeah, we did that because we knew people weren't going to like it. And now it's cool because, we're doing the things that we're breaking the rules. And so I don't know, it just kind of turned me off a little bit. So it's a movie that I think is an interesting experiment. It seems to be succeeding somewhat financially. It seems to be making a lot of people very happy while making a lot of people very unhappy. So it's going to be a wide spectrum of reactions that horror and slasher fans have to this one, but it's at least worth checking out for something different. Coming in at number 5 is going to be The Fall Guy, one of the, 5-6 movies in the last couple of months that have been like the sign of the end times, where it doesn't make all this money and people freak out. Is theaters dying? Is Hollywood dying? Is the world ending? I don't know, man. Like, obviously, theaters are declining. This is a subject for a whole other video, but I liked The Fall Guy. I liked Furiosa and a couple other movies that have sparked this conversation, but I don't feel like they're the types of movies that there's this obvious sign that people just aren't going to go to the movies anymore. I think that the movies have their own individual issues that lead to that. The Fall Guy, fun movie. I enjoyed it. Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, big fan of both of them. I was not familiar with the TV show from either the 70s or the 80s that this is somewhat based on, but I don't think you really need to be. It seems to be its own thing entirely. You have a stuntman who goes on this investigation, and he gets into a bunch of different action sequences and big, epic stunt pieces where, because he's a stuntman, he's able to do all this badass action hero shit. And I think that the performances all across the board are really good. I think Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt are charming. I don't know if their chemistry was the best in this movie, but they're still fun to watch. I think that all the action sequences and stunts and everything were really exciting. However, the movie tries to do way too much. It tries to be part action film, blockbuster. It tries to be part romantic comedy. It tries to be part almost meta celebration / send up of stunt workers and how unappreciated they have been throughout movie history. And it just feels like it tries to juggle too much. It should have picked 2 of those things. And to me, the big one that suffered was the romantic comedy side of things, which, as I said, the chemistry, something with their relationship, it just, I don't know. We didn't get enough time with it. So it didn't really feel like I was invested all that much. But it's a fun movie. It's exciting. It's a good time. But I don't feel like it was a movie that marketed itself the best. I don't feel like the name The Fall Guy is something that draws a whole lot of people in or really even tells you what the movie's about, unless you're a fan of that show, which most people that I've talked to didn't even know it was a fucking show. It's a film that I think people discovering it over time are going to enjoy it, but I understand perfectly fine why it wasn't this massive, huge smash success. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Furiosa, another movie that, again, didn't have huge numbers at the box office, and so it sent everybody into a panic mode, and just like with Fall Guy, I never really expected this to be a big hit. I don't know why everybody else did. I love Fury Road. I love The Road Warrior. I enjoy the other Mad Max films. I don't think, Thunderdome's okay. If I'm going to say one of them is not really my cup of tea, it's that one. But I do like this franchise a lot. And I loved the character of Furiosa back when Fury Road came out. But let's be real, it's been damn near a decade since that movie came out. And as much as I loved the character, I didn't really need a prequel. I didn't need to know the origins of Furiosa or have the events leading up to Fury Road spelled out for me. I would have been more interested in a sequel, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, waiting 9 years for a prequel, I feel like is kind of a recipe for the amount of money that they got. The movie is very well made. It's fun. It's got the energy and the attitude and, the blood, sweat, and chrome kind of aesthetic of Fury Road. So if you like that movie, you get more of that Fury Road thing going on. I think that Anya Taylor-Joy, as well as the younger actress who I neglected to bring out, to point out in my review for some reason, do a good job at capturing the younger character of Furiosa. I liked seeing kind of the world of Fury Road with Gas Town and Bullet Town and all that kind of being explored a bit more, getting a little bit more context for how this section of the apocalyptic world works. I thought that was really interesting. You still get a lot of car chases and explosions and shootouts and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very frantic, action-filled movie. I wouldn't say it's near as action-packed as Fury Road, but it's quite a bit. The issues with the film, besides just waiting a really long time for a story that I personally don't think that we need, I would have much preferred seeing the story go forward than backward, is that, the character of Furiosa in this one, it kind of sticks to that Mad Max template of being somebody who doesn't talk all that much. I felt like there was much more personality. There was more... I don't know, the character popped on screen a bit more in Fury Road. And maybe that's due to Charlize Theron's star power. I really don't know, but I was more interested in her version of Furiosa than this one. I also feel like the actual story they're telling here, the revenge tale, is something that we've seen numerous times. And so it's done in a Mad Max Fury Road style, so it's unique in its execution, but the base level story beats are very run-of-the-mill. I also didn't love the amount of CGI that they decided to use in this one. Part of the appeal of Mad Max, and especially Fury Road, was how much practical stunt work and practical explosions and practical vehicles and all that stuff was in that film. It was magnificent to watch. In this one, you still have that, but it's painted over quite a bit with this CGI gloss. And it has this very comic booky style and aesthetic and visual look to it to make it more modern, maybe make it a little more distinct than Fury Road. And for me, that made the experience lesser. For me, it made it feel more phony. It made it feel more manufactured than how raw Fury Road was. So I enjoyed this one. I dug it. I would absolutely rewatch this one. But again, like with Fall Guy, I saw it and I went, okay, pretty good. Not near as good as Fury Road, which that in of itself wasn't a massive financial hit. So this one, yet again, being like the sign of the end times, I don't quite get that. Coming in at number 3 by a landslide, the biggest surprise of the month for me, and that is If. This is a film that I honestly didn't think looked very good at all. I really like what John Krasinski has done with the Quiet Place films, and so I'm very interested in him as a filmmaker. And when I saw that this is what he decided to do instead of continuing on and doing more Quiet Place films, I was like, I guess he's got more things he wants to explore, and I respect that, but why this? This is strange. And the trailers I didn't think were all that funny. It just didn't really appeal to me. I was like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe this is going to be good, but it doesn't look good. And so I didn't see this until last week. A couple of weeks after release, I finally took my kids to go see it. My youngest daughter was really interested in checking it out. And so sat down to watch this, and I got to be honest with you, I was so surprised how emotionally resonant this movie was for me and how much it genuinely affected me on an emotional level. I still think some of the jokes were maybe a little infantile for my taste, which is what most of the trailer was filled out for. But the overall story here of having a girl that has gone through a lot of trauma where she lost her mother, her father, played by John Krasinski, is currently in the hospital about to undergo a potentially life-threatening surgery. And so she ends up in this situation where she links up with Ryan Reynolds, who is currently trying to basically relocate all of these imaginary friends that have been forgotten and abandoned by their kids as they have grown up. And she links up with him and makes it kind of her focus to help him with this journey, to find ways for these imaginary friends that have been forgotten to re-find their place in the world. And as the movie went on, it genuinely got to me emotionally, where it's exploring what it's like to grow up, what it's like to have this, the world, this imagination and this outlook on the world when you're younger and you're so innocent, and having that stripped away from you by the reality of life, and still kind of needing some of that as an adult sometimes, but having a very difficult time getting back into that mindset. And the role of imaginary friends, of bringing that piece of life back to these people. And I don't know, man, even talking about it now, I'm getting emotional. It didn't seem like a movie that was really going to affect me that much, but by the end of it, I found myself kind of tearing up a bit and walking away going, that is something that I really enjoyed. That's something that my kids can get it on the more surface level, goofy, fun side of things, but adults can get something a little deeper out of it, because we're the ones kind of being represented in the movie in a way where it's I remember being that innocent and just imagining what the world is going to be, imagining what life is going to be, what adulthood is going to be, and then the crushing reality of how life actually is, kind of stripping away a lot of that joy and wonder. Not that life is joyless, but you know what I mean? The realities of the hardships of life taking over as you get older, and you don't have the shield of being able to be an innocent kid that's able to just enjoy things. Something about that just really hit me. So I think this is a movie that if you were like me and you didn't really get sold on the trailers, or maybe the lower box office than was expected with this movie kind of turned you away from it, give it a shot, especially if you have kids, because to me it was a really well done, sweet, emotionally resonant family film that I look forward to watching again. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Last Stop in Yuma County, and this is a film that I saw last September at Fantastic Fest. It's currently only on VOD, I believe. It might be in theaters in select cities. Hopefully we get a physical release of it soon. But if you remember a couple of months ago, I told you guys about a film called One Lucky Day, or Your Lucky Day, where a bunch of people stuck in a convenience store and a winning lottery ticket kind of sends them all into turmoil, and they're all trying to get this ticket. This is a very similar setup, but wildly different execution, where you have this desert road, and you got this diner and this gas station that's the last stop in Yuma County for hundreds of miles. And so you have these bank robbers that stop at this little gas station diner combo, and they're waiting for the gas truck. The gas tanks are empty, but the gas delivery's on the way. And more people start stopping at this diner. And so it's this slowly ratcheting tense situation where eventually the gun's going to go off. Eventually something is going to be let slip, that the big bank robbery in the previous town that everybody's hearing about on the radio, those guys are in this diner. And eventually the revelation that money is here is going to make people turn into the worst versions of themselves. And so it's a very fun, tense, kind of quirky movie that explores that bottle situation. I think that Your Lucky Day and this one are a really interesting, double feature, very different movies with similar setups. I did prefer Last Stop at Yuma County ever so slightly. So it's a really good movie with really interesting characters, and it has a lot of darkly comedic fun with its premise. I encourage you to check it out. But coming in at number 1 for me is going to be Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This was one of my most anticipated films of the year, and luckily it ended up being my favorite film of the month. I am a massive fan of the previous trilogy, the Andy Serkis trilogy, as well as liking a lot of the older movies as well. This is a franchise that I've enjoyed throughout my entire life, one way or another. But that trilogy, the Andy Serkis one, was such a perfect trilogy of movies in so many ways that as much as I wanted to spend more time in this world and explore this more, I was always guarded about how are we going to be that good again? Like, it was shocking enough as good as Rise of the Planet of the Apes was when I don't think anybody had faith in it. And then we all were skeptical about how good Dawn was going to be. And then we were skeptical about how they were going to be able to land the plane. Like, you can only win so much before the law of, reality starts to take over and you have a shit installment in the Planet of the Apes movies. So I was really worried, like, how are we going to continue this story? How are we going to do this without Andy Serkis? What are we going to do to be as emotionally resonant as those movies? Like, what are we going to do? And the trailer and the plot synopsis really sold me about jumping way into the future and exploring the legacy of Caesar, not doing a direct sequel where his son is the main character or something obvious. Let's explore the legacy of this martyrized character and the different ways that his legacy, his words, his teachings have been twisted in different factions. And let's just explore that. And I thought it was a really, really interesting and really profound thing to do for a story progression, to show how some people try to maintain the validity of people's words while others try to manipulate them and kind of phrase them in a way to fit their own agendas. And in a lot of ways, it gives a pretty subtle commentary on political figures as well as religion and things like that without being overly heavy-handed at all. And so it's a very relevant story to tell. The CGI and the world building and everything like that, visually, the movie is immaculate in the same way that that previous trilogy was. The only thing that it kind of slipped on a bit for me was that I wasn't nearly as invested in these characters as I was the characters of the previous 3 films. Maybe that will change as this trilogy goes on. I'm assuming they plan at least a trilogy here. And there was a couple of things going on with the female human character that I don't really know how I feel about her. And I think that's by design. I think they set her up in a way where we're going to continue this story and you're not going to know exactly how you feel about her or how you align with her. And I don't know, something about that, until I get the rest of these movies, I'm going to feel a little uneasy about that. And that's the biggest thing that was kind of my main takeaway from this one. As much as I really enjoyed it, is that how the trilogy progresses is really going to make or break this first film, where there's a lot of things that are built that I'm very intrigued and very invested in, but how they follow it up with the second and third film is going to determine how successful this movie is long-term for me. So if you're a fan of that previous trilogy and you were skeptical, don't be skeptical. It's very good. It's not quite as good. It's not quite as amazing as those previous 3 films, but how many movies are? It's a very solid continuation that had a lot of interesting things to say. So it was my number 1 film of May 2024. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all my 2024 new release reviews. I'm also going to put the playlist here of all my previous month wrap-ups for the rest of 2024. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.